It is Tuesday, I believe. Yes, and this is Trekland HQ, and we are live. Good Works, Will, Nichelle, and Trek Talks 2. Today, episode 290 of Trekland Tuesdays Live. With me, Dr. Trek Larry Nemechek, coming at you from the heart of Trekland, right through Portal 47 for some sanity, clarity, and the big picture in all things Star Trek. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another Tuesday. I still feel like I'm in that New Year mode. I think everybody else does too. We're hanging on here in California with the rain. I think it's broken for now. I'd like to break 3-year droughts, just not all in 1 week. But not to be all topical about this, welcome back, everybody. I hope you're settling in and hope your Tuesday's going well, your week's going well. If you are one of our regulars, you know what to do. But if you're new to Trekland Tuesdays Live, welcome. We've got a wonderful chat going on here. Jump in there, introduce yourself, say hi, let us know how it's going, what's the weather like where you are. Settle down or settle in, I should say. Get raucous if you want to. But I'm going to jump off on a topic, and then we will take a tiny break, and then I will check in on the Parrot Analytics TV ratings, such as they are, and then I'll really dive into the chat. So I'm not going to interact until I circle back around and do that. But there's plenty of folks in there to interact with. When I hit the chat, I really love questions, especially, although we always get off. And just a reminder that if you're on Facebook, you're only going to see the Facebook chat. If you're on Twitch or YouTube, you're going to see it all. And if you're watching this later on YouTube, I wish you could join us live some Tuesdays. I know during the day for the Americas, it's hard to do, but we're here at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern, and then 8 UK time, 9 Central Europe. So we try to be global in everything Trekland. And that includes this week's theme. So we're here in we got 6 weeks to go now of Star Trek hiatus, so no fresh Trek. And good Lord, when I started this, Discovery had started, but there were still long gaps. The idea of a Star Trek hiatus being a short period of no fresh Trek was kind of laughable, and yay for the last couple of years, no matter what your favorite is. Fair enough. So we've got 6 weeks here, and it's interesting that it's the first of the year, and I've said before, we kind of get that antsy using the holidays and the January time to kind of look forward, look back, take stock of everything. And it got me to thinking, based on a big event coming up this Saturday for everybody globally, no matter where you are, this kind of pause and refresh and reflect. And if you're on my news list, we've been doing even more polls than usual lately. And you can get on my list at larrynemechek.com. It's just, I try to do it twice a month, but it got busy in the holidays. When you're there, you'll see all the things going on. You'll see how we have info up about our next Trekland Treks here, especially for the cruise folks in LA. You don't have to be, but on February 23rd and March 3rd, you can check on that on our tour side of things. Also, the Big Geek Nation Tours West Coast Away mission in July. That's multi-day, 10 days in LA and San Francisco. All my tours are location sites. It's awesome to be there on your real live away mission. That's what's happening. Also, just in general, what's happening at the site with events, including my cons coming up and including events like what's coming up Saturday, Trek Talks 2, which is the second one. It's benefiting the Hollywood Food Coalition. It's kind of John Billingsley's, our own Dr. Fred Flox's passion project, and there's a whole raft of folks involved. I will get to that. But all of this kind of time of the year got me thinking on our last poll, on our last news list. So jump on the news list if you can, there at larrynemechek.com, just your email and where you are. And you can tell me what your favorite Trek is and all of that. But I did a poll last week when we were shutting down all of our holiday service offers. So if you wanted that, it's too late till the next special comes along. But I always have a share. It's something of my archives, or I love polls because everybody can get involved and I can report back here. So this last question was basically, have you ever done any nonprofit charitable giving in the name of Star Trek or related to Star Trek. And I had several offers there, the way my MailChimp lets me do it. So I had several pre-answered options, even with some that were had some flexibility to them. So here's how it went. Wasn't as big a return as some of the polls we had right before the holidays, but I figure people are going back to work, families and things are kicking back. Your attention span's a little lower, but we still had a good turnout, enough to get a clear kind of trend line going. Okay. So by far, I'm going to invert this usually. So, because we all have different budgets and all that, it's not about how much or even whatever. I was specifically asking if you've ever done anything connected to Star Trek, because there's all kinds of ways to do it. I basically say, yes, I have, in alliance with a local club, because so many folks are part of now Facebook groups, much less a physical club. And, Star Trek is notorious for doing all kinds of conventions, clubs, up and down the line. We are wonderful for doing good works that way in the name of Star Trek. And it's, in the old days, it was great publicity to look like you were a normal person. We don't have to worry about that now since the geeks won. I remember the first time I saw an Adopt a Highway sign by a Star Trek club outside of, I think it was the USS Las Vegas. So yes, 17.6% said yes, they had done something that way in alliance with the club. Now I'm jumping around here. Had several responses that didn't get an answer. No one said they had given in the name of Star Trek, but on something unique, like they just donated somewhere and they said this is in the name of. Last year, or a couple of years ago, for DeForest Kelly's 100th birthday, his favorite charity was the North Shore Animal League, and I gave a donation in his name on his centennial of his birth. That kind of thing. If you take it on yourself just to say, I'm doing this in memory of or because of. I had no responses on yes, in alliance with StarTrek.com, which has that Star Trek Gives hashtag on Star Trek Day, which was a little surprising. Maybe with a bigger return on the poll, I would have got that. But I had that in as a specific one since it was so national and had been around for 2 or 3 years now. So no takers there on my list. And allied with a regional con. Yes, but allied. So that was kind of an iffy definition. I was trying to get somewhere between our local convention and going to StarTrek.com or Comic-Con San Diego or something big and national, a DST, FedCon, something like that for Europe. I was trying to find a midway point. So nobody answered that. Understandable. Had one person say in alliance with a local convention, which that happens all the time. All the fan cons we used to show and throw back in Oklahoma were always allied with. In fact, ThunderCon's and many years SoonerCon's main charity was, and I've gone blank. It was helping. But it helped families with small kids under 2, for their diapers and formula and all that. That's what it was for. Somebody's going to throw it in the chat. One of my old time friends is going to throw it in the chat. I'm sure. I feel bad about that. I can't remember because they're still in existence. So I should at least give them a shout out. But that was a Central Oklahoma based. But local conventions are doing that all the time. It's just good PR. It makes everybody feel good. It does good. It's a great way to build bridges with folks in your local community and emphasize that one of the strengths that all local conventions have is being of the people. We're not a chain con. We're not carpetbagger cons. Yeah, those were all terms from my past that we used to use. That's anyway, I had one person says that's 2.9%. Okay. Then next up was in alliance with Trek celebrities. So many actors over the years. The first time I ever remember seeing this back in the days when you went to a convention, bought photos from a photo dealer, and then went and had an actor sign it because the actor was just signing as part of their deal before everything shifted. Financing conventions went from the members, and it was a big risk, to financing packages with preordained packages with the talent that way, and everything was by the piece. And it shifted the responsibility from the committee to get out and get people in the door to people coming in the door themselves. But the late great Mark Leonard was the first time I ever saw that. His daughter suffered from a kidney condition, and he was selling his own photos as a fundraiser for the American Kidney Foundation, I think. And I was like, oh, what a concept. That's cool. That's the first time I ever saw that. And that was in the 80s. And of course, it's grown and grown and grown since then. So many things. And now you have online to do that. It doesn't have to be a live event. But so that's another option. Again, 5.9% of the returns said yes, in alliance with the Trek celebrity doing that. Then next up was in affiliation with a national club or convention, 8.8%. So some of the great national clubs out there, fan clubs and conventions, I guess, that are that way, are doing that. And then you can tell here how it's gapping. Then we actually had a tie. 17.6%. One said yes, allied with a local club. And there you go. The more grassrootsy, the more you feel involved, and the more you see the good going to something right there in your neighborhood, in your community. So that's understandable. The other 17.6% says, here's the fly in the ointment about trying to read a trend. I had to do this. Yes, they did, but across several of these. So even some of the zero responses may have been foregone in favor of someone saying, yes, I've done this for several. A local club, babystarter.com's giving, hashtag giving, a celebrities project. So, okay, there's the big fudge, 17.6%. So by large, I did have a no, not ever in connection with Star Trek. So people may not be their persuasion. They may not be able to, but of those who did, a lot of people give, and it never has anything to do with Star Trek. It's like Christmas presents that have nothing to do with Star Trek. How did that happen? So that was the clear majority of respondents, the plurality anyway. 47.1% said no, not connected to Star Trek. But that also means that 53% here have said yes in some way. So that's kind of cool. I mean, that's been such a part of Star Trek events since almost the beginning. Again, in the early days, it felt good. It's always good. It's the spirit of Star Trek, and looking to the future and lifting ourselves into a better future and lifting those around us into a better future, a more stable, a more secure, a more enlightened future. And then along the way, it just made good sense. It was a great way to build bridges in communities. And yeah, it was good PR, but especially the more local you get, the more your heart is in that. Or you're a celebrity driver. William Shatner's horse show every year for his charities, getting kids and horses together, doing good for underprivileged youth, and having horses be a center part of that. And people find ways to personalize that. So that's our theme, because the last few years, I have some interesting, going personal here for a second. Here in LA, a lot of you know, I've long been associated with the Will Rogers State Historic Park here, especially here, not even more so than in Oklahoma, because I was so far distant from Claremore there. But here in LA, I can get to the ranch. It's a historic state park. It's awesome. There is a nonprofit. The family is still involved and has been since 1944, when it became a state park from the family, from Will Rogers' family. And if I'm talking something new to you, please Google Will Rogers and know that you're not going to get the impact of the guy. And the more we approach modern life and delve into the future, the more Will Rogers looms as this amazing guy, way ahead of his time, although he was the #1 media personality and most loved person of his day, #1 box office star. But at the heart and soul, now we would say he was multicultural. Now we would say all these things. He's a pundit. He was a stand-up. He did satirical. He invented the nightly monologue, in my mind. All these things. And that's why we're so busy trying to not just keep him alive, but the spirit of him alive, because it works in today's world. Whether you're talking about, yes, diversity and access, you're talking about preservation, and you're just talking about civics and historical awareness, and the ideas that everything he said sounds like it could have been written today. And aside from that being quirky trivia, what it proves is nothing we go through these days has to be new and scary, whether it's, here in America, whether it's Vietnam and Watergate, or it's a climate change, and in his day talking about the Dust Bowl and the drought and you know um, anything, politicians, bankers, doctors, the foibles of fascism. Trickle down theory was a term in the 30s. Yes, all of those aspects I love, because it just brings that alive, and if nothing else, shows us that we haven't done that. And on the other hand, you got horses. So I was very thrilled a year ago when the Will Rogers Ranch Foundation asked me to be a member of their nonprofit 401c3 board. And after a pandemic and after a couple of years of some burnout, I helped restart our movies in Will's backyard. So we showed a movie, but we also added a big family day, and it was a huge success. We had the biggest turnout they'd had in several years, and everybody coming out of the pandemic feel. So we're planning some more aspects like that. But I'm very proud. And, on one hand, I think, well, the Will Rogers Ranch Foundation Board, it's historic buildings and grounds, and it's nature, and being a part of that is enough. But we bring kids in, just trying to get the spirit of Will, to show that it's timeless. This is not something new and trendy from the last 10 years or even since the 60s. This is a spirit that's been around and was, again, subversively simple, and penetrating the mainstream there without being right in your face. But so many vibes that I'm thrilled to be a part of, and later on realized the connection between Will and our fictitious Dr. McCoy on Star Trek. At times, mostly I think of as gentle subtext and a whoa, let's just calm down and look at this and remember all this, the heart and soul of things with a far-flung future attitude. And that's why I have come to realize why I enjoy Will, aside from being a fellow native Oklahoman. The good part of the state, I will say. But why the foundation is I love to put it out there in our events. We're going to be doing more things this year with comedy, with representation. We're going to be doing more events that way this coming year. But that's why I can see the bridge between Will and his legacy and working that way, and all of the heart of Star Trek. Now, what's even more on the nose to most of you all is this last year when we lost Nichelle, there was already immediate talk about some kind of foundation to carry on her legacy. And that's kind of apparent, but getting broad-minded. I was very glad to be asked to be on, and this was just announced a couple of weeks ago on her birthday, December 28th, the Nichelle Nichols Foundation. Yay! There we go. So I'm very thrilled to be on the advisory board for Nichelle's foundation with a whole host of other folks. It's family and friends who are on the board of directors. But I was very tickled to be asked to do this. Now the advisory board's grown to 12 or 15. We are launching. The main thrust of, obviously, is going to honor everything that Nichelle stood for, inclusion, diversity, everything that was all about her NASA recruitment, which was such in the spirit of Star Trek and in the spirit of Uhura, communication, if you want to go to on the nose there. Yeah. But even far afield from just what you expect on the nose, talking about STEM careers and STEAM. STEAM is science, technology, engineering, math, with the arts involved too. Getting that across genders, across all ethnic lines, racial lines, just getting more inclusion. The same way that Nichelle helped make our astronaut corps, our American face in space, our future, literally, look more like America. That was what she was all about, right? So I'm sitting here trying to get to the fact that I'm very proud to be on this with folks like Walter Koenig, and folks from the Trek orbit, especially, although it goes far beyond that. Some like Dr. Aaron McDonald, Dr. Kat Roberts, who I got the pleasure of working with, who's a real life doctor. Yes, Star Trek continues, and Aaron McDonald, who is watching her career head off, but our science advisor for all the modern Treks and a great friend. There's a lot of Kayla Icavino, Dr. Kayla, who a lot of you know from fandom and from Trek movie, real life volcanologist, all kinds of folks on the board. My friend Dr. Dave from Arizona State, real life through their projects, planetary science with JPL and NASA, some of the teams he's worked on or been adjacent to. A lot more folks too. On the business side, Nichelle had found that Woman in Motion, the name of the documentary, comes from the foundation she and several other women of color founded 20, 30 years ago about encouraging more women of color especially, into business, into empowering themselves. And I met some of them at her retirement convention event. I'm leaving out folks, Amy Ewan that I've known through fandom, but she comes from computer science. I could name all the names here off, but if you go, it's Nichelle Nichols Foundation, I think .org. No, Nichelle Nichols .foundation, but you'll get there if you Google it. Very excited about that. Eventually, we're going to have scholarships, obviously money behind the message, but in the beginning, going to have speakers. It's easy to have virtual speakers. We're coming up right this month with starting this month. Eventually, some live, but I'm very thrilled to be on the advisory board. There's a board of directors that's closer into the family and some of her longtime friends. But being part of this advisory board and helping out, and yes, I'm going to moderate and host a couple of those events. There's lots of talent and people that want to help here. So, but between being Will's Foundation board and that capacity and that audience, and even beyond the aims and goals people have beyond, there's so many needs in the world. And so much of it's just right on the surface, and some of it can be a little further down and nuanced and still being good. Some of the things we wonder with the Will Foundation, with the Will Rogers Ranch Foundation, and certainly what's going on with the Nichelle Nichols Foundation, reaching in and empowering and inspiring the future, literally, and changing, enlightening, bringing awareness to everybody now, but especially with a forward skew. And that's really, since the generation that knew Will Rogers is long gone, that's really where we are with the Will Rogers Foundation. All the wonderful things that people saw in his lifetime while alive, making sure that stays and his legacy stays. Which brings me to, those are personal events, something that I am personally involved with, but is hardly my project. Dan and Bill at Trek Geeks came up with this. My buddy John Champion and everybody at Roddenberry, Rod and Trevor and everybody at Roddenberry are co-sponsoring for the second year, born of the pandemic. But look what we've done with virtual reality, virtual communication, virtual meeting. Trek Talks 2. Trek Talks 2 is a day long of, on the surface, it's panels with all kinds of Star Trek folks, but it's really more like an old school telethon. There's all kinds of entertainment and good Trek talk coming with panels all through the day. I'm going to be hosting one with some of our art and visual effects heroes. But I mean, just look at this is coming this Saturday, right? This Saturday, January 14th. It starts at nominally 10 p.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, but it'll really be 15 minutes before that with the pre-show. There'll be several ways to donate. There's a QR code. There's Give Butter. There's a text code also. You can go to trekgeeks.com/Trek Talks. If you just Google Trek Talks or Trek Talks 2, you're going to find how to get there. I'll have some links. It'll be on my site, obviously. It'll go on for hours. Sci-Fi Sisters is doing the pre-show again, the way they did last year. But I mean, look at these names. Scott is alphabetical order. Scott Bakula is going to be a guest. John, of course. In fact, John and Bonnie Gordon are our co-hosts through the day, right? So Dave Blast, the great production designer and fanboy, unabashed, for Picard, who's been so out there, social media. Brannon is going to be a guest. Andre Bermanis, great Dan Curry is on my panel. John Delancey, Doug Drexler, Terry Farrell, Jonathan Frakes, Sirach, Lofton, Mike McMahon, Lower Decks, obviously, Anson Mount. We've got the captain showing up. My friend Dr. Helmut Moore is going to be there. Mike and Denise, Akuda, Rod, obviously, Bob Picardo, Narain Shankar. You know him from The Expanse, but he started off as a science advisor on Star Trek. Narendra 3, look it up. The great Anthony Montgomery, Armin Shimmerman, Brent Spiner, Armin and Kitty both, Nana and Will Wheaton. And that's just the list I'm looking at. There'll be a lot more going on. So it'll be panels through the day, but all through the day, it'll be like an old school telethon where they'll have a tote board going. And it's for the Hollywood Food Coalition, which also partners with other food banks around the country. This has become really John Billingsley's passion project. The pandemic kind of put a wrench in actually going down. If you're here in LA, you can go down and hands-on. What it is they take it's the industry. They take all, if you think about how many companies this is why a writer's strike or an actor's strike is such a big hit to the economy. There are lots of catering companies, and I say catering, you think, oh, weddings. But no, I mean, just the everyday, the food that crews have on location. And you think Star Trek doesn't go on location very often, but think of all the crime and cop shows and medical shows that are out on location all day. And then the movies that are actually still shot in LA. It's a big industry. A lot of food is prepared and it goes to waste. So the extra food, the unwasted food is rounded up. Plus now, that was the original intent. Now there are just folks who are on board with donating. There's tons of food, rather than have it go to waste, is rounded up, but it has to be efficiently delivered. So an army of volunteers does that. And then beyond just that simple model, HOFOCO is expanding out to partner with allied groups. And, they're sharing notes on what to do, on how to process and procedure and goals and visions for what can do for those that are still going hungry, and which includes tons of kids. So you can read the statistics and all that. So kudos on John being involved with that, and then eventually partnering with Trek Geeks, with Dan and Bill and that whole network, and then the Roddenberrys and Roddenberry Podcast Network. And so, yeah, I am thrilled to be part of that. I don't know if anybody in the chat was part of this last year. It's bigger and better, as they say, this year. So it's a live stream. They are using the word telethon. Read the tagline, Larry. Anyway, that is this Saturday, starting at 9:45 Pacific and 12:45 Eastern, which means it's totally accessible to our friends across the pond, at least the first few hours. You don't have to be up till all hours. You can watch it on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. So go to the site, trekgeeks.com/Trek Talks. I'm looking, maybe others. That's the main one. There's videos. There's been a lot of promo out about it, and of course, share it across to all your fan circles and friends. You don't have to be a Trek fan to donate. Obviously, any mundane off the street can jump in too. But it's this is one of the unsung aspects of Star Trek and fandom since almost the very beginning. We should do some, off the top of my head, I cannot remember if there was a designated charity for the first New York con. Somebody may catch me on this. But I know that within 2 or 3 years, that became a facet of most Star Trek cons. Now, of course, sci-fi cons have been around since the late 30s. Old school lit cons, before there was any media to celebrate. And I'm sure that Good Works was part of that. I'm pretty sure there were like blood donation banks as part of those early Trek cons, as well as others. And over the years, and fandom got so sophisticated finally and woke up to the idea of helping, here in the States anyway, 501c3 type nonprofits who are trying to do some good somewhere. Where they're nationally known, like the Cancer Society, American Cancer, or what have you, American Heart Association, or whether they were very local based and local focused and doing good works locally. So I'm excited. I'm so thrilled this happened. See, this is also the silver lining of the pandemic. Not only that virtual streaming, although, I was doing Portal 47 in 2015 on free conference call with video added. It wasn't totally unknown, but the world came to see it as an easy tool. Okay, thanks to the pandemic. And also the pandemic giving everyone a chance to breathe, not for the best of reasons, but at least one outcome was everybody had to slow down. Everybody had to sit at home and live with themselves, had time to think and realize what we took for granted, realized what was really important in our priorities, starting with those workers who were declared more necessary than maybe they were being remunerated for it and treated publicly. But we got a chance to stop and think about what could happen. And all these basic tendencies in Star Trek fandom, most every fan con these days does have a designated 501c3 sponsor. A lot of the commercial ones do too, much less what the club activities are happening. All those options I had in the poll are a thing. And of course, all the celebrities who have, like John, take it either in a small way or a big way. A lot of folks just take it from place to place where they go. For years, Bob Picardo's auction at the end of Star Trek Las Vegas on Sunday night was a feature until the program grew so much that it kind of wiped it out. It was a really good time to stop and reflect on this. And I hadn't talked much about Nichelle's new foundation. I wanted to get that out there. Going to be working on that. I'm going to be doing a lot more with the Will Rogers Ranch Foundation. We say Ranch Foundation. It is about keeping up helping the state with the physical aspect of the property, but we're also about school kids. We're also about reaching out. We're also about building what we can do financially there as well, about basically the basic goodness of humanity, the free will, the inclusion. They didn't use those terms in the 20s and 30s, but all the best of what Will represented through modern eyes, as well as helping the world remember him. And there's some interesting projects underway that I'm going to be talking about in the next year or two. Some in media that are going to bring Will back to a modern audience in a big way through very modern eyes. And I can't wait for that to happen. I'm only on the periphery of that, but I'm so proud of it. So yeah, here in January, fresh start feelings. It's interesting how we, in Star Trek especially, harness that and try to spread that basic goodness, that future-looking, optimistic, geeky tech, but also inclusive, diverse, not just toleration, as Gene said. We don't just tolerate differences, we celebrate them. Otherwise, you stagnate. I never understood why this was such a hard concept. If you don't take in new blood, fresh blood, you stagnate. That's kind of the biological way of looking at it, but adapt that socially. Why does the little town bypassed by the new interstate desperately miss that traffic? They dry up and blow away unless they do something creative to attract the outside world, which seems to be an antithesis these days in some people's minds. No, we just want to sit here cut off from the world. That's fine. That's the way of the future. No. Well, the way of the future is this spirit that we've been celebrating here today. And events like Trek Talks 2 are going to be celebrating doing good for our fellow humans and having fun along the way, too. As a famous captain once said, as I used to quote every morning on Life Support Live, wherever our mission takes us, we'll try to have a little fun along the way. And that's what I hope everything that I'm involved in, that's what I hope everything that's halfway connected to Star Trek that's doing good works in the world is also doing as well. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm curious to see what comes up in the chat and just to see how everybody is these days. Right. So if you're with us on Facebook, on YouTube, so if you are watching us later on YouTube, I hope you see this in time to take part in Trek Talks 2, but certainly you'll be aware. I invite you to watch for the further news coming down the pike of what's happening with the Nichelle Nichols Foundation. And I'm going to check something on part 2. And I would even, no matter where you are in the country, I'm going to invite you to pay attention as we start to unroll some new projects for the Will Rogers Ranch Foundation that I feel very close to, because it's the spirit of Will needs to be shining a light out there and doing good works in the world too, as well as, yes, helping keep up the property there and partnering with California State Parks, who's going to have their hands full after these rains the last few weeks or the last few days here in the state. So think of us. My brother in Oklahoma was asking for rain from us. Can you send some our way? That's a switch. I guess it keeps the world fresh. Anyway, I'd like to thank these folks for keeping our world fresh here. Before you go totally, our Patreon folks, our TTL Club, Diana Hopkins, Lawrence Todd, Keith Rombach, Nathaniel Robinson, Robin Wilson, Anne-Marie Siegel, Justin Porteous, Andrew Jazimski, Pranakasha Productions, Gay Clevin Lundstrom, and Glinda Bruton. Sorry, Glinda. And our live wires, Halberd Gunn Johnson, Robert McLean, Alan Hoensi, J.R. Poole, Byron Bailey, Dave Gregory, and Casey Shafsky. Yes, thanks. They're coming in, helping me out with Patreon. You can too. Patreon.com/Trekland Live. It's very simple. I keep it simple, $5, $10. We have a lot of ways to interact and support here. I just say, if you go beyond, if you want to help me out and support what I'm doing here, especially with our interactive and live streaming, just go ahead and join Portal 47, portal47.net. But thank you all. Thanks for being in our Patreon crew with just those two levels. We keep it simple. You know, Patreon has a lot of other creatives going on too. You might find something else you really want to help support too. This week, once again, it's the Trek Files 2 is up from Roddenberry Podcasts. The main hub is at Facebook. That's where the documents are, our actual Trek Files every week. But you can find the audio. I hope you can check out the documents though, because they're there. But the audio is everywhere, wherever fine podcasts are caught. Podcast.roddenberry.com for all the whole lineup of great podcasts. Mission Log and Mission Log Live, but also Sci-Fi 5 and Fan Addicts and all kinds of great podcasts in a growing list. Yes, podcast.roddenberry.com. And also just me in general. If you want to find me and you don't know, Twitter still. It's also the same for, what's the other one? The elephant? At LarryNemechek.com. Larry Nemechek's Trekland here. Like and subscribe if you're seeing us live or later. Same thing on Instagram. Instagram's so much fun. Portal47.net is the place to go to check out Portal 47. I should add Trekland Treks to that too, shouldn't I? Anyway, thanks everybody for being with us for another Tuesday. Maybe I'll see you in the chat. My panel is at 5 Pacific. 5 Pacific. We're talking about visual effects and art. We're going to have the great Dave Blass, Mike and Denise, Dan Curry, I think Doug. So it's going to be very packed because all those great folks you saw are giving their time in one measure or another through the day. Again, with John Billingsley and Bonnie Gordon, the great voice of the Protostar computer, and her own crewman, as you saw a couple weeks ago. That's it, gang. Hey, if you are leaving us now, please stay healthy. I mean, read the trend lines. I don't be alarmist. It's exhausting, but this virus circulating in our system, in our globe, is not done with us. Hopefully not to pandemic proportions, but we should just get used to a new normal here. Just being smart, okay? So do all the things. Stay woke. The same way that I think Will was just as woke as Nichelle was. Check your sources. Look out for wacky info out there and be open to new information, new ideas, just because you hadn't heard it before in your life. But check the sources too. Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, as always, trek well, everybody. And we're not going anywhere. That's part 1. If you're new to us, I hope you're having a good time bopping in the chat. I'm almost there. I just want to make a quick look. There were new ratings up for the Parrots, and if you didn't know, the Parrot Analytics is a company to analyze all the streaming shows, because the model of the old terrestrial broadcast with the Nielsen ratings, primarily here in the States, is kind of moot, because I don't know how many people numerically are watching versus the old networks, but I know the winners of the Emmys seem to be viewed by a minority of people every year, and the Emmy telecast goes down and down and down. But that said, that opens the door to the need for someone to measure that, because Netflix and Prime and Disney Plus and yes, Paramount Plus aren't going to release those numbers unless it suits them. And that's business. We didn't evolve that way. So here's the thing. This week, the Parrot Analytics, right now, they have released the weekly ratings through December 23rd. So we're still 2 weeks behind, but it's a week later than what I had available last week. So I'm only going to say that this week on the oh, here we go. Gosh, I had this ready to go too. So there's just a panel. You can't see everybody, of course. Boom. That's just a few of the folks coming for Trek Talks 2 Saturday. So this week, Stranger Things, they measure the internet with a algorithm they call average demand expression, where they're looking for instances across anything: posts, reviews, comments, threads, original posts, videos, parody, whatever. And yeah, Stranger Things was number 1 this week, 68 times the average popularity of the show. Wednesday was number 2 at 48.6. The Mandalorian, The Witcher, Titans, Ted Lasso, Andor, Tulsa King popping up there. So there's a Paramount Plus. Warrior Nun, The Cold Navat got their own show. And The Handmaid's Tale at number 10 at a factor of 25.6 times the popularity. Now, I did go check the individual trend lines on our Star Trek's coming and going. Prodigy leaving at its peak. Strange New Worlds coming up next in the pipeline, but not for 6 weeks. Of course, all the hoopla. I said Strange New Worlds. Picard season 3 next, February 16th. All the hoopla rising about that. Just released some new photos and a new poster from the Television Critics Association tour a couple of days ago or yesterday. So that's, but there's no current numbers coming out of Parrot Analytics, which is frustrating as we kind of watch this in between time, and the effect of the holiday distractions and the peak of Prodigy at its finale and all the increased attention it was getting, and yeah, the build up to Picard season 3. So it's disappointing not to have that right now, but there you go. The overalls, Saturday Night Live was back at number 1, SpongeBob number 2, Stranger Things and Wednesday were the only 2 in the top 10 here from digital side. And it was Stranger Things was number 3, Wednesday was number 10. And in between was Game of Thrones, Rick and Morty, The Simpsons, Walking Dead, My Hero Academia, and Sesame Street. And again, Parrots are measuring buzz activity, whether it's by studios, whether it's by critics, whether it's by fans. So at least it's an apples to apples measurement device. It has its flaws, because criticisms, I think, rack up as much as, but what's a criticism? Fan debates are fan debates. We've always had those. The important thing, what's the old adage about even bad news is good news, or even bad publicity is publicity? Yeah, the most fatalistic would be out there. They're talking about me. Yay. So the Parrots are a little disappointing to looking at current trends right now, so we'll hope they catch up. Let's hope that the drunk of the holidays passes and we get some, or even a whole new system. I'm curious if anybody has really out there been watching. There are some reports coming out from Variety. There's all kinds of end of the year and into the quarter topics about show popularity and about the future of tech and media and where we're going. I should dive into one of those to talk. We've got nothing to talk about here for another 6 weeks or so. I say that, yeah, 5 weeks maybe now, until Picard is back with us. And you're going to get an increasingly huge drip into an avalanche of all the teases, what's going on with that. So can't wait, as the rest of the world is, can't wait for that. I think most of the world has gotten the hint, whether it was just from what they see online or what showrunner for season 3, Terry Matalas. Why do I call Terry's name wrong? I've known for years it was Terry Matalas. Since he was Brandon's assistant at the end of Voyager and through the Enterprise days. He's tried to, each season has had a slightly different showrunner going on with it. And Terry's tried to say this is the stamp of season 3. And only because they were so back-to-back, he would have been more involved with season 2. But with the back-to-back filming that Patrick asked for, still during the height of the pandemic, he broke off to basically focus on 3, while Akiva brought home season 2 and the rest of the writers' room, obviously. So I think all but some of the unwashed are still looking at all this as one plate. But Terry's been out there with enough drips and drabs and leaks and not leaks, but teases, and some of the official word coming down the line, increasingly so, that this is going to be something special. Much less having the cast. Oh my God, Gates has been so out front. This is the best Crusher I've ever been handled to perform. So I think up and down the cast is excited about it. We'll see though. 6 more weeks. In the meantime, in between timing, we got fun. So I am backtracking now for all you keeping score at home, and we'll see what's happening with the scroll here. Hey Glenn, this is the first, what are we saying here? First TTL you've been able to make in a few weeks. Really? Okay. Well, cool. Thank you, Christoph, for the GSA report here. See how I can remember it now? German-speaking aliens. Got the whole final season 1 of Strange New Worlds and Prodigy, so no more spoiler anxiety. Also, yay, Prodigy. Wow. There you go. Is that your official review, or you're just, I didn't mention that I really saw a review. But in other words, yay. And great for all our friends there in Central Europe. Yes, Glenn, that was a missend. I sent last year's email instead of the one. But you should have gotten the replacement for that, and then a couple more since. So you might check your spam filter there. Absolutely, Yvette. Good to see you. Yay, Trek Talks 2. Thank you, Dave, for looking out for us on the Twitch side. Oh no, I hope things settle down. There you go, Scott. A couple of the docs through crowdfunding, if that counts. Also donations to Nichelle, Michael Braveheart, and of course Trek Talks one last year. There you go. That's the spirit. Yeah. I mean, the documentaries aren't saving the world in any capacity, but they're saving our sanity, which is one thing. I had at a business event one time. I'm surrounded by people who are trying to do businesses / nonprofits to, help empower women, save babies, save wildlife, build housing. And I'm just doing a Star Trek fan company, basically business. And I had some very mundane people who were not fans look at me and say, oh no, you're doing a lot of good. Star Trek is keeping an awful lot of people sane and keeping them inspired, and just helping deliver more of that to the world is a good thing. So that made me feel better that we weren't just totally out here selling tickets to football games, that we were actually doing some good in the world too. So yay for that. And if there's been anything the last few years, it's anything to help us keep our sanity, keep our hope, and stay connected. And I think Star Trek has all of that. Has all of that in its bailiwick. But you're right here, Dave. So many ways to give in the name of Trek. Very good. Oh, well, Christoph, actually, I've had this last one, but over the holidays, the polls basically doubled in turnout, which was very nice. But I'm going to chalk that up to folks being home and less hassle and less stressed and invested. Well, you know what, Narda? Considering that the Spock doc, there were two. One was Adams, and his daughter Julie did a Spock documentary that was really about partnered with COPD and publicizing the effects of COPD, and how even the fact that Leonard quit smoking 30 or 40 years ago did not keep it from developing later in life. Kimber, thank you so much. Hey, yay, good to see you on here. Have you been lurking for long, Kimber? I knew it was babies. But yes, Infant Crisis Center of OKC in Central Oklahoma. Wonderful. And I'm pretty sure they're still going. I hadn't checked lately. I knew they were 4 or 5 years ago. Because certainly the demand and the need has not lessened. Infant Crisis Service, thank you, Center. And if you're in Central Oklahoma, or even if you're not, you might consider them at some point. And yeah, several Trek-related, Trek creator-related charities and crowdfundings, of course, yeah. And gang, I didn't mean to turn this into a competition or a judgment or anything like that. This is more like it's a spread the word, but it's also, yet again, another step back and connect the dots. And remember that there are ways of doing good in the world that may not seem so apparently at first. Just like there are aspects to Nichelle's foundation that may not be apparent at first, but some of the speakers who are going to be lining up for some of the virtual talks that will all be free, by the way. I'm sure there'll be a way to donate on the side, but they'll all be free, much like Trek Talks too. They'll just be one-off speakers through the year. And that's going to get ramped up very quickly. But some aspects that you may not think of it right off the top, but ways that our namesake, same thing with Will, our namesake in modern eyes would very much have been a part of, or was viewed through a different lens. Just there's so many needs in the world, and so many unmet needs, and so many things that should be pioneered. So it's good to hear from everyone. Again, I wasn't, trying to get into a race or contest or a tote board here with anybody. What are you saying here, Christoph? No genuine comment on Twitch or YouTube. Facebook comments are forward fine, just to be clear. Are we having no, I had Dave in from Twitch at least at the beginning, so we'll see what's going on. That's fine, May. We'll, just everybody, I should start saying, everybody check your spam folders, because mine amped up about 2 years ago for no reason. Justin, you've donated through both your local clubs and local cons, since they both went hand in hand back in the day. There you go. How are you saying, Dave? Along contributors to various Trek-related charities, glad to support your local Greatest Gen Trek Club here. There have been more opportunities and visibility since the pandemic. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's been kind of a silver lining. More things have become known as needs, and more channels to be able to help them have become apparent. And they've got more tools to do it with. Glinda. Winchester, just a hunch. Will Rogers never met you, did he? And Sherman Potter would be one too. Colonel Potter would be one to say that. Because in 1952, you could still do that. The generation was still very fresh in mind. Steve, Slaughterville and Noble rules. So does Ada and ECU. Yeah. Yeah. And the connections all around. We really do have great access to Trek stuff and things and people. There we go. Hey, there's everybody. See, we've got the channels open. Yes, channel open. Good to see you, Doralta. Yes. And, well, this is true, Glenda. When you went work from home, you had all your gas money budget. You could go to Trek stuff. A lot of people saw how they could realign priorities and things. Okay. I'm going to let you guys have your I will agree with you, Jim. Woman in Motion was one of the best documentaries I've seen. I knew it was, I was prepared to love it because it was Nichelle, but it was so well done. They had major points. And of course, there's a whole generation has no clue what Nichelle did for recruiting for NASA. And almost the parallel tragedy of how many were lost in the Challenger. I'm not sure about Columbia because that was half a generation later, but oh my goodness. And we've talked about that before when Nichelle passed and her legacy. But it was an excellent, excellent documentary. Oh, thank you for this mention, Christoph. Dr. Aaron just started a scientific characters podcast. There you go, everybody. I am not sure about this, Michael. Maybe somebody will answer. It was on either Prime or I want to say Prime for a long time, but it could be out there, and maybe Paramount Plus picked it up. So someone's going to chime in here and say that. I haven't checked lately. Food banks are a thing in Germany. Yes. And isn't it a shame that although we live in wealthy times, people still go hungry? Well, speaking of Will, one of his most famous radio addresses and speeches of all was before FDR, before the New Deal, when Hoover was trying to respond to the Depression in antiquated ways. They were trying to do everything privately, which is the reason we have a social safety net, because the first 2 years of the Depression, everything was about how do we fix unemployment and hunger and all of this, and the housing crisis from all the people thrown out on their mortgages. And there was Owen Young, was an industrialist. As Will said one time, he was the only remaining millionaire Democrat born of white parents west of the Mississippi. Came up with a plan for every community to raise its own money. Well, by that time, who had the money? The rich did, the wealthy did. Middle class and the poor, much less, were all wiped out by then. And farmers were being kicked off farms and businesses shut down, and the bread lines and all of that in the factories in the cities. And the first half, there was an hour reserved of half an hour of national radio time on all the networks, NBC and CBS and Mutual. And the first half before Hoover spoke was Will speaking, and he was supposed to be talking up the Young plan about doing this. And he did, but he took the time to be as pointed as he ever was. And speaking about that, he said, there is something, I'm loosely quoting him here, I can kind of quote, but he said, this is the speech, the radio talk, where he said, we live in a country with more corn and more wheat and more money in the bank and more of everything else you could ever want, and yet we have people starving every night. We hold the distinction of being the first nation in the history of the world that ever went to the poor farm in an automobile. And that's kind of a little bit of rustically dated language, but he got the point across. How could we be this rich and wealthy, and even with dust storms and even with Wall Street crashes and people out of, we'd still had more than so many others in the world would have, and we've got people starving and out of work. And that was about as ragey as you ever saw Will get. And it was one of his most famous lines. But it's the same sentiment, Duralta. Yeah. Okay, Women in Motion only links to Apple. Or you can pay a few bucks on several services. So, right now, technically not for free. Oh, what now? You can check it out, womeninmotionmovie.com. All the stuff. Let's see. Social markets, super cheap grocery stores that only those in need may shop at. Hope you don't need food stamps. That's interesting. That's interesting. Food stamp stores. Yeah, the sad thing about that is kind of like school lunch menus are now seen to be a school lunch, free school lunches here in the States. They've got a stigma. It's kind of like the short bus, only for different reasons. And stigmas that are easily arise are enter into a whole nother wrinkle that has to be dealt with. It's bad enough that you're there than to have a stigma piled on top of it. If there were lit cons, does that mean people in the 50s did Buck Rogers cosplay? Yeah, if they were kind of retro-y. But by the 50s and 60s, you had Forbidden Planet, you had Day the Earth Stood Still, you had Andromeda Strain, you had, and by 69, you had 2001. But yes, and Captain Video and and Cadet Corey and Cadet Happy and all of that. There you go. So say we all, if you might borrow a phrase. Cross streams there. Okay. Well, Glenn, I'm glad you could join us with your breakfast at 2:20. Oh, Steve, you're too kind. Okay, Steve, you're making me feel very old here. Because you're only one behind me. But thank you. That's very, man, I just miss you, man. We've been stuck so long here. Maybe this year, maybe next year. If only it was that easy. Yes, guys, I just did a brain fart. Mastodon. The extinct elephant. Yeah. Oh, cool, May. Yes. Well, don't wait for my panel. You can be there all day long as much as you can. You saw the lineup of folks. And then we've got another fun thing. Oh, I should also mention the voting is going on right now. The Trek Talk later. I'm gonna get it all posted. We'll get it out there. I think it's at 5 Pacific, but the schedule's posted. Everything's out. It'll be there. It'll be all good. But also the voting for the Lappy Awards, the Live Long and Prosper Awards, that the 7th Rule and Virtual TrekCon especially, is coming up in February. But right now you can check out off their sites and do the voting. There are some serious ones. There are some funny ones. So, because it is Trek. So I wanted to also mention that voting is open for this year's Lappies too. Some of these early part of the year events before the cons really crank up. Trek Talks 2 on 2 screens, NFL playoffs on the 3rd. Who needs sleep? Said the guy in Innsbruck, Austria. What do we got going here? Oh, there we go. Okay. I'm going to see. We're looking for actual questions. I'll let you guys talk about American football. The one, this is what I think, Glenn. The one and only person they have at Parrot who does the top 10 ratings must be on vacation. Then I think once or twice they've hedged, and later I see them and they have it's like they predate them. I'm like, well, wait, it was not there. I did a show after this, and this was not there then. I think they're hedging. I think somebody is fudging their work. They're predating their deadlines. Hey, Mark, good to know. Good to know. Maybe I'll see you in the chat while we're running. Although we have 20 minutes with all those luminaries. My bit. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to glance at the chat. Maybe it's an actual parrot and it's sleeping now. I don't know. Okay. Wednesday. Okay, now we're doing the Wednesday recap show. They made Morticia too normal. 6 weeks without new Trek is depressing me. Well, I'll just binge watch Handmaid's Tale and maybe Andor. Well, Melanie, yes, and now you get what's going on. You get what's going on with the parrots. It'll be interesting to see if we can get up-to-date results, what the Picard return shows up as in the top 10 there. And again, that's what we're talking about. There's only the top 10. They rank all 500 whatever now shows. It's starting to shrink. Peak TV, peak stream TV may be a thing of the past. It may be coming down from the peak. They're consolidating now, and the crazy early boom years may be over here. Let's see. It's an X parrot. Oh yes, Mark. Did you? I have my handy dandy sign and everything there. It's the day before they depart, and it's the day after they depart or they return, disembark. So this is the Thursday before they leave Friday. This is the Saturday after they return Friday. Are you interested? Get in touch with me. Ping me on something, and we'll DM or email or whatever. Or, click LarryNemechek.com, go to the page, and then get down in the contact form down there. Love to have you. Love to have everybody. And you don't have to be on the cruise. If you want to get yourself to SoCal and join in that day, then boom, there you are. Oh, there we go. The parrot analytics are saying, quack. More no track. Quack. Quack. What happened to my squawker? I can't squawk. We've debated this point. Prodigy had the best first season for a Star Trek series since TOS, and yes, that includes Strange New Worlds. We had a discussion with one group that said they enjoyed Strange New Worlds was good, but they really thought the best of New Trek were the two animated series. Discuss. What is the sanity of which you speak? Sorry, I didn't mean to offend, Melanie. Oh, thank you, Scott. There you go. Scott's right there on the button. Boom, boom. And it was the COPD spot. There you go. So yes, I would say that counts, Narda. Well, it's spam, but at least it's not porn spam. Okay. At least it's not. How about that? I know, Glenn, I had to finally train myself to look at the spam for things I'd been getting routinely that I wanted all along. Well, Deralta, yeah, he was from MASH. Although I almost wouldn't. Hi, Mike. Hey, everybody. Really looking forward to Trek Talks 2. Jessica and I are scheduled to chat with Brandon about Star and the Orville. There you go. Mike Richards, everybody. In from Mission Log, the Orville. And thus, there you go. I take it by Star, you mean Star Trek. So this is what I mean, everybody. The Trek Talks 2 is going to be an awesome, interesting day. One panel reserved for Brandon and the Orville, and who better to handle it than Jessica Lynn Verdi, the voice, the opening voice of the Trek Files, who introduces me every week. And we did the great live. If you didn't see our live shows with, first of all, with Andrea Kindred, I'll plug this again. It was awesome to do. We were trying to do we were supposed to have stage hours got curtailed. We did it at my table. It was still awesome. I just feel sorry we couldn't have an audience out front, but it was such a kick for me, for John and Jessica to do their Trek Files bits live, because she recorded hers in 2018 when we started, and it's been nothing to her except knowing it's out there. But anyway, it was very cool to do that. So yes, Jessica's your co-host on Mission Log Orville, and that's awesome, getting everybody involved. Well, it was a very 50s early show. And Space Cadet, yeah. There you go, May. You're there all day long. I knew Anne-Marie would get the lappies in there. Boom. There's your link, everybody, in chat. I'm going to get all this on my site, too, when get caught up. There's so much stuff exploded here. And I'm still trying to clean my office. Hey, Doralta, you are looking forward to season 3 of Picard, although you heard that it might not be the last season, but the way Patrick worded, I'm thinking Jean-Luc is going to be a dad. We'll see. We'll see. Being very coy about all that, huh? Thinking no one is safe. Don't kill Troy. I know. There you go, Glenn. You're doing your lappy vote right after work. So you might be late to the main viewer. Okay. Don't worry, Anne-Marie. Your secret is safe with us. All righty. Voting ends soon. Yeah, sorry I don't have the deadline here, but again, you can find it. It is very soon. Those new galaxy. Those new galaxy. Yep. Subscribe to many streaming sites you need to watch more often in order to get what you pay for. Well, you still get it whether you're live or not. I mean, I hope so. Like Portal 47, probably only a chunk of people are on with us live and everybody gets the recordings later, although I love it when we can be live. Thank you. Voting on the Lappies ends Friday. Wow. Friday at midnight Pacific. So that's 3 a.m. Eastern. 12. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Oh, sorry. We missed you, Adam, at the beginning, but it's good to have you in. Good to have you by. Well, that would be good to know. Somehow I don't think Brandon's going to be able to announce this on a charity telethon 20 or 30 minute segment, but there you go. Oh, you just watched season 4 of Disco. I think it may be the one where they suss out scientifically how species 10-4C communicates. And it's it's a weird landscape. It's one of the first contact segments with the 10C, either when they get the idea of smells as a communication mode, or whether they actually make the contact. That's been mine. The B plot of the bad guys and Book being an accessory, that was kind of eh. Although having Jet Reno as the fulcrum at the end, the catalyst to undo it all, was a fun choice. But to me, the whole thing was the totally non-humanoid, finally not just bumpy-head aliens, taking the time to mix the science and the imagination of a totally different kind of alien, non-humanoid alien life. That thread toward the end was my favorite part of the season, I think. And something no other Star Trek has ever done, really. At least since the days of the giant amoeba pushing the boundaries of 60s visual sci-fi on TV. So whatever episode that was, or 2. Mm-hmm. And part 2 of... Oh, thank you, Scott. I missed this. Thank you. This is the live Trek Files 2-parter with Andrea Richardson Kindred, Gene Coon's assistant, that we did live from my table. But we taped it to be a Trek. You can listen to it as a Trek Files episode, but we did the live video, which was awesome too. We saved that. So thank you, Scott, for that and for our second episode. Yeah, you and a few million others, I think. Yes. The end of the chat as we know it. Yay! Yay, 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 yay. Tumor Boys with us. Hi ho. An original Twitch account. Oh my gosh. There we go. George. George L.L. Martin. George L.L. Martin wrote the final Picard episode so everyone dies. You guys in your Ville. Petticoat Conjunction. What's your function? Yeah. You think it's very Troy-centric? I was thinking it was looking very Crusher-centric, but Troy was kind of in the previews anyway. It was not figuring largely. Let's see. I think we're getting down to be... Okay. Okay. There you go. This is the reality of it. She didn't do much in Picard season 3 because she didn't want to leave her elderly dog in London and not move them again. Even over to Toronto, much less back to LA. And the end of the chat is there. Yay. So, what have we learned on the show today, kids? I'm sorry I didn't have a visual. I didn't have a visual for Will. I'm going to work on that. Next time we have a Trek feeling vibed Will event, I'll talk about it later on this year. But for right now, if you're curious about all the plans and early goals of Nichelle, it's at nichellenichols.foundation, which I know is interesting. But if you just check it out, if you just Google for Nichelle Nichols Foundation, there's the homepage to boldly go, and all the gosh, they're not showing up. See them there? Nichelle Advisors, Events, Partners, and Contact. That's their photo. Very proud to be part of the Nichelle Nichols Foundation. So you'll be seeing news about that as we ramp up with this great group of people on the advisory board too, and some who I've not met yet, and I look forward to that. Will Rogers Ranch Foundation, if that appeals to you, urban kids, getting them into the country, proclaiming across all the different things that Will had a hand in, aviation, Native American recognition, politics and civics, and just basic education in horse sense, and history, since history and civics haven't been taught in the nation, apparently, for the last generation. Look at where we are. All these things, the history of film, the history of comedy. I mean, those are all cool things, but really grounded things, common sense knowledge of what's gone before us, and opening the awareness of what has not been taught over the years. As Will said, his folks did not come over on the Mayflower, but they met the boat. Yeah. So much good Will stuff that speaks to today too, as does Nichelle, and as does, again, hopefully you can join us Saturday for the Trek Talks. And again, as I was speaking, if you want to get on my list and get on some of those polls, boom. If you want to do that, check out LarryNemecek.com. Get on my list there. You can also click in once again and see our one-day special Trekland Treks, these LA away days to top 4. Yeah, we're going to go to Vasquez Rocks. We're going to be at the Tillman Water Plant. We're going to be at Miramontes Lake, Franklin Reservoir, and one other. All 4 there that are a great introduction to the world of Star Trek location sites. Bring your cosplay, bring your props. There's that way. And it's even magnified by 10 with the partner trip with Geek Nation Tours, 10 days in LA and San Francisco with celebrity guests. That's just 4 starters: Armin, Tim, Mike Westmore, and Bobby Clark. That's just a starter sample. Otherwise, that I'm so grateful to all of these guys and gals and peeps. You can too, if you want to help me out on my Patreon. It's patreon.com/TreklandLive, helping us spread our streaming reach and capacity, what we can do here. Shout out again for the Trek Files this week. Mike Demerit is my guest. Longtime Voyager Enterprise assistant director, now teaches at New York Film Academy in Burbank. talking about some of the early roots TNG military terms and sets and things, what got used and what didn't. Some of it's kind of funny. He's a great person to have on that topic. At the Trek Files on Facebook's where the documents are. Everywhere fine podcasts are caught otherwise for the Trek Files. And of course, beyond that, Larry Nemechek on Mastodon and Twitter, and soon to be on Post, if I'd ever get my button gear. Larry Nemechek's Trekland right here where you are. Please make sure you're subscribed, and please share when you can. Facebook, Instagram too, and portal47.net if you want to check out deep diving Star Trek all year long, where no savvy fan has gone before, with not only the resources and brain inside of Dr. Trek, but our great global Portal 47 community, a lot of whom are with us here today. That's going to do it for Trekland Tuesdays Live. Hopefully I'll see some of you Saturday. Fingers crossed for Trek Talks 2. And don't forget to go check out voting for the Lappies as well. I'll be sharing news about all of that, plus what's happening with the Nichelle Nichols Foundation. Our first speaker is this month, and I'll make sure to always be handing those out on Tuesdays. Make sure we have those as well. So here we are, end of a Tuesday. Thanks so much for joining me. If you're watching later, you're not watching later because this is never on later. I'm glad for all of you here with us live. It's good to see you. That New Year's feeling, I hope, is still hanging around no matter where you are and what's going on in the world. Hopefully 2023 is going to be, again, a little brighter, shinier, more upbeat than these last 2 or 3 we've suffered through. But we're all still here, and we're all gaining silver linings from it as well. Stay woke, everybody. Check your sources. Oh, stay healthy, too. Do all the things. And, of course, Trek well.